the room that wasn't there. I should have known something was off the moment I checked into the hotel. The clerk hesitated when I asked for a quiet room, his fingers drumming on the counter. The lobby was nearly empty, yet he glanced over his shoulder before handing me a key. "Room 712, he muttered. His eyes, dark and hollow, barely met mine. The elevator ride felt unnervingly long. The old bulbs flickered and the overhead light buzzed like a dying insect. When the doors slid open, I stepped into a dimly lit hallway. The air smelled stale, like dust and something else, something damp. I counted the rooms as I walked, 708, 710, and then 714. I stopped. Number 712. A cold sensation crept up my spine. Had I miscounted? I turned back, slowly retracing my steps. But no matter how many times I looked, there was no room 712. Just a stretch of blank wall between 710 and 714. Yet the key in my hand felt real, heavy. Against my better judgment, I reached out, pressing it against the wall. A soft click. The wall shuddered, and then a door appeared. I hesitated. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, to go downstairs and demand a different room. But something, curiosity, foolishness, made me step inside. The air was ice cold. A single chair sat in the center of the room, facing an antique mirror. The wallpaper sagged, peeling away in strips, revealing something dark beneath. I caught my reflection in the mirror. But something was wrong. My reflection didn't move. I lifted a hand. It didn't copy me. Instead, it just stood there, staring. And then, slowly, it smiled. A slow, unnatural grin stretched across its face. The door slammed behind me. I whirled, yanking the handle, but it wouldn't budge. My breath came faster, my pulse pounding. In the mirror, my reflection took a step closer. Its eyes darkened, its mouth widening, too wide, splitting almost to its ears. Then it raised a hand and knocked. 3 slow, deliberate taps against the glass. I froze. From the other side of the mirror, someone knocked back. The light flickered. My reflection's grin twisted into something hungry. The cracks in the mirror spread, jagged like veins. The knocking grew louder, more frantic, and then the glass shattered. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was my reflection crawling through, and it wasn't me anymore. The 13th floor's last guest. I travel for work, so I'm used to hotels, cheap ones, fancy ones, even the ones that smell like stale carpet and bad decisions. But nothing could have prepared me for the Preston Heights Hotel. It was old, the kind of old that settles into the walls like a sickness. The lobby was beautiful in a way that made my skin crawl, all red velvet and golden chandeliers that seemed too polished, like they were hiding something beneath the shine. The receptionist, a pale woman with wide, unblinking eyes, handed me my key with an odd hesitation. "You're on the 13th floor," she said softly. I frowned. Hotels usually skip the 13th floor. She only smiled. "Not this one." The elevator ride up was slow, the kind where you feel every floor groan beneath you. The doors finally creaked open to a dimly lit hallway. The air smelled musty, like something damp had been sitting there for years. My room was at the end, 1313. The room was wrong. The furniture was nice enough, but everything felt slightly off-center, like someone had tried to rearrange it but gave up halfway through. The bed was made, yet the sheets looked wrinkled as if someone had just been lying there. The TV flickered static for a second before turning off by itself. I told myself I was being paranoid, threw my suitcase on the chair, and headed to the bathroom. That's when I saw it. The mirror above the sink was cracked, a long, jagged line running straight through the middle. I could still see my reflection, but something about it wasn't right. I leaned closer. My reflection leaned in too, but then it smiled. I didn't. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The reflection stayed still for a moment, grinning before slowly lifting a hand and placing a single finger against its lips. A warning. I turned and bolted for the door. It wouldn't open. The knob twisted, but the door refused to budge. Behind me, the mirror made a faint cracking noise. Then another, and another. I refused to turn around. My pulse pounded in my ears as I yanked at the door, kicking it, slamming my shoulder against it until finally, it burst open. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath. The lights flickered wildly. The hallway seemed longer than before, stretching endlessly in both directions. The elevator at the far end let out a soft ding. The doors slid open. Inside, standing perfectly still, was me. My own face, my own body. But the eyes, they weren't mine. They were empty, black pits swallowing everything. It stepped out of the elevator, head tilting slightly, that same grin spreading across its face. I ran. I don't remember how I made it out. I don't remember the stairs, the lobby, or the street. But somehow I was suddenly outside, gasping for breath in the freezing night air. The hotel behind me was dark, the windows lifeless. It looked abandoned. I turned to look for my car, for a taxi, for anything. But when I glanced back one last time, I saw it. One window, dimly lit on the 13th floor. And in it, my reflection, watching me, still smiling. The 9th floor. I should have trusted my gut when I first stepped into the hotel. Something felt off. The air was too still, the front desk clerk's smile too forced, and the lighting too dim for a supposedly high-end establishment. But I was exhausted from my drive, so I brushed off the unease and took my key. Room 918. The elevator ride up was unsettling. The buttons were old and worn, but what really caught my eye was the missing button for the 9th floor. It skipped straight from 8 to 10. My brows furrowed. That couldn't be right. My key card clearly said 918. I turned to the only other person in the elevator, a middle-aged man in a wrinkled suit. "Hey, do you see a button for 9? I asked, forcing a laugh. "I think they forgot it." He turned his head so slowly it felt unnatural. His eyes, bloodshot and sunken, stared at me for an uncomfortably long time. "9th floor?" His voice was hoarse. "There is no 9th floor." Before I could respond, the elevator dinged. The doors slid open to reveal a dimly lit hallway. The sign on the wall read 9. I turned back to the man, but he was already gone. The elevator doors were shut, leaving me alone on a floor that apparently didn't exist. The hallway smelled musty, like old wood and something faintly metallic. The carpet was threadbare, patterned in a swirling design that seemed to move if I stared too long. The lights overhead flickered as I walked toward my room. 918. The door looked different from the others, older somehow. The number plaque was tarnished and the keycard slot was scratched as if someone had desperately tried to get in or out. I swiped my card. The lock clicked. Inside, the room was ice cold, and the stench of damp mold filled my nostrils. The decor was outdated, like it hadn't been touched in decades. The bedspread was a deep, rusty red, though I wasn't sure if that was the original color. Then I noticed the mirror. It covered nearly the entire wall opposite the bed, and something about it made my skin crawl. It wasn't dusty like the rest of the room. In fact, it looked pristine, as if someone had just cleaned it. That's when I saw the reflection. A figure stood behind me. I spun around. Nothing. My heart pounded as I turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there. A tall, gaunt man in a tattered suit, his face hollow and eyes completely black. His mouth moved soundlessly, lips forming words I couldn't hear. The lights flickered. The TV crackled to life with static. Then I heard it. A whisper, right in my ear. "You shouldn't be here." The air turned thick, pressing against my chest. My breath came in short gasps as I stumbled back toward the door, fumbling for the handle. It wouldn't turn. The figure in the mirror grinned. The lights went out, and the whispering turned to screams.